Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, Brunning, Bruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. Week 5 got underway last night with a Thursday night football game that saw 60 points and one Bears victory. So we only have one winless team in the NFL. And you know what? Spoiler alert, I don't think they're getting their first win this weekend. But Dennis and I are here. We're going to be breaking down the rest of the Week 5 schedule, first week of buys. So we have 4 teams out. Only 13 more games left this week, but should be pretty exciting. Dennis, how did you enjoy Thursday night football?
I loved it, but if I remember correctly, I picked the Bears to win. So
I and most of America, I think, picked the Commanders, and that just did not work out.
So it's interesting because I know that Fields ran a little more yesterday than he did last Sunday, but the confrontation is what I'm going to call it between him and Getsy and Eberflus was about the team not playing to what he does well, and a lot of analysts, myself included, thought, well, he's going to start running a lot again. But when you look back at his career at Ohio State, yeah, he ran. But he also looked down the field to throw the ball. Now, granted, at Ohio State, he had a better receiving core than he has in Chicago. But he's doing that now. He ran a few times. I think he had 57 yards or something yesterday.
54, I believe, yeah.
And he made some tough runs. He got out of trouble. And because he's a big dude. He's 6'3", almost 230. And he's out there and he's just putting the ball on people. You know, he just missed. You know, I tweeted last night. I was like, "Oh, look at Darnell Mooney out there racking up the unrealized air yards," because you know he was just he's like just this close. My fingers are an inch apart for those of you on audio only. With Darnell Mooney, and if he can get Mooney going the way he's got DJ Moore going, that Bears offense all of a sudden become super explosive. We saw Khalil Herbert have another big run last night. Now, he did leave the game with an ankle injury, and we'll have to see how things go. It looks like it might be Deontay Foreman time again. They got 10 days to get Roschon Johnson through the concussion protocol. Because I don't know, like, is Travis Homer the other one that they're down there?
Yeah, Travis Homer got injured. Johnson got a concussion. Herbert got knocked out. They had another running back who was in there. I can't.
Carey Blasingame. He's a fullback. Who they ended. I think he got 11 carries or something.
Yeah, Homer got injured. Never even got a carry in the game. So that takes some talent.
So yeah, it's like me. I just woke up with a pinched nerve in my neck, and I've been on IR for a week now.
Well, we'll get into the game. The Bears won 40-20. You know, Justin Fields, another big game, 15-29, 282, 4 more touchdown passes. That's 8 in the last 2 games. And really a great connection with DJ Moore. Again, 8 for 230, 3 touchdowns, one of them on that sad at the end of the game where I don't know if you saw the Commanders tried to make the interception and it just did not work out for them. But how are you feeling about that Fields to Moore connection?
I love it. I think that's what they brought DJ Moore to Chicago for. That's what Chicago, when they went out and got him, they were like, we need to give this guy a weapon. And, I know they went and got Claypool, who they just jettisoned. It was funny when I saw Claypool was traded. I figured it was something like Miami sent Chicago a 7th-round pick for Claypool and a 4th-round pick because you just got to pay somebody to take Claypool off your hands. But that's not what it was. It was like a Claypool and a 7th for a 6th or something. I think they got, they're onto something with DJ Moore. Still another strong connection with Cole Kmet, 5 for 42 and a touchdown. Now a lot of it's going to come down to can they keep the running game going if Herbert's ankle injury is bad, if he ends up missing some time, or if he tries to play through it and loses some of his explosiveness or shiftiness. That's really my concern there. And that may be the type of thing that leads to Field carrying the ball a little more. Like he rushed it 11 times. Blazing game only had 8 carries, but I like the connection. I think they're dialed in. They're both trying to accomplish something. And right now, Fields is on pace to break that 4,000-yard mark if he plays all 17 games.
For the Commanders, Curtis Samuel, another pretty solid game, caught 6 for 65 and a touchdown. A lot of people had been talking about Jahan Dotson, but we've really seen Curtis Samuel, came into the week as wide receiver 44, about 16 spots ahead of Dotson, who was wide receiver 61. And Samuel really getting featured kind of as that second receiver behind McLaurin. Are you starting to like him more as a weekly play?
Yeah, it seems like Dotson's a little more boom bust, touchdown reliant. I think too, last night was a weird situation. For me, I expected the game script to be much heavier in the run game for the Commanders. I just thought they would play better. I didn't think they would get behind early. Howell threw the ball 51 times, and they only ran the ball 10 times, and 4 of those were Howell. The other 6 were Brian Robinson. I felt going in that we were probably looking at an 18 to 20 carry game for Robinson, but the game script just flipped so fast that they were having to throw. So, if Howell throws the ball 35 times, are they going to have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players with 4 targets or more? I don't know that they'll spread it around to 11 different players if he's only throwing it 35 times. But I do think that the top 3 are receivers are McLaurin, Samuel, and Dotson, but Logan Thomas, 11 targets, 9 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown last night. And I bet he was in nobody's lineup. I think that McLaurin.
I actually played Logan Thomas in a couple of places because I don't have a great tight end situation. And so I wasn't mad at that at all.
I think that what's happened right now, I think McLaurin is a low-end wide receiver 3, high-end flex until they settle down. I think Curtis Samuel is definitely in the flex play, and he does have some upside. Dotson is the troubling one because you just don't know. He when he has a great game, he has a great game, but I'm not sure that he's dependable. He's kind of he's kind of behaving like when we picture Gabe Davis's career. That's what Dotson's looking like right now.
Well, he does seem kind of, like down the field threat. Curtis Samuel, they're also giving him kind of the Deebo Samuel treatment. I've noticed he didn't get a lot last night, but he will get running plays. And in fact, last week did pretty well just getting the rushing touchdown. So it all helps.
Well, actually, Dotson's ADOT is 8.4 yards, where McLaurin's is 11.1, Samuel 7.3, Logan Thomas 7.7. So it seems like they're using McLaurin downfield more as well as Dotson.
Maybe they just forgot Dotson was on their team. Now on to the rest of the Week 5 preview. And again, we have a London game, so remember to get up early. This is a 9:30 a.m. Eastern start. The Jacksonville Jaguars, 2-2, who've been there for a week, played last week, at the Buffalo Bills, 3-1. Dennis, the Bills have won the last 3 games by 20-plus points. Do you think the Jaguars can keep it closer?
Can they? Maybe. Will they? Probably not. It's a situation where the Jaguars just aren't clicking 100%, and maybe not having to travel back and forth between the games will help them and give them an advantage over Buffalo. But I don't know. The Bills are very, very good. Buffalo has scored 59 more points than the Jaguars on 3 fewer plays. And the Bills do give up production to running backs on the ground and through the air. So potentially they could eat up some clock with ETN through the air and on the ground. But I don't have a ton of hope. I think it's going to be a tough game all around for the Jaguars. They'll probably be playing from behind. So maybe it's a situation where you get some production out of the receivers and the quarterback. But I don't see this being a Jaguars victory.
On the other end of the spectrum, Josh Allen has been white hot. 5 touchdowns last week. He has been slinging the ball, running the ball. Is he the QB1 right now for fantasy?
He's being outscored by Justin Herbert. But, if somebody, to me, it's a coin flip. I think that Herbert he's got a little bit better receiving weapons. I think James Cook aspires to be Austin Eckler. Stephon Diggs is probably the best wide receiver of both groups, but I think the Chargers have better depth. Now, does that mean that the Chargers guys, Gabe Davis, can't get more consistent? Khalil Shakir can't get more production? No. Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. I think overall I still would take the Chargers receivers over the Bills. But the Bills, they're clicking. They've got their plan. They know what they're doing. Stephon Diggs, if he goes a couple quarters without getting some attention, he's reminding people, get me the ball. I'm that dude. And he's been putting up the numbers for it.
I am taking the Bills in this one.
I am as well.
Next up on the docket, the Houston Texans 2-2 at the Atlanta Falcons 2-2. Dennis, CJ Stroud has been hot, and he has really been lifting the boats of Nico Collins, who's wide receiver 7 coming into this week, and Tank Dell. How are you feeling about those guys as fantasy plays?
They are a good-looking 1-2 punch right now down there in Houston. And Robert Woods actually leads the team in routes run. He just isn't getting quite the production that they are. Woods is second in targets to Nico Collins, and Dell is third on the team. Woods is a reliable guy, and I think that he'll be that third guy. But Nico Collins is playing like I think the fantasy community thought he could. But there were a lot of naysayers talking that CJ Stroud probably wouldn't be the one to get him there. And while I didn't think Stroud would be like, QB5 potential. I felt like he could be, fringe QB1, QB10 maybe, because he doesn't run. Right now, if he starts getting the touchdown production that some of these other guys at the top do, I see no reason why he can't be a mid QB1. And if he's doing that, Nico Collins and Tank Dell, they're going to be a 1-2 punch to contend with.
For Atlanta, we like the potential and the talent of Drake London and Kyle Pitts, but this offense has not really allowed them to shine. What does that mean for you in fantasy?
Don't you mean London and Jonnu?
I mean, Jonnu Smith's actually is shining. Kyle Pitts He's out playing Kyle. Well, not out playing. Outscoring Kyle Pitts.
Smith is tight end 11. He's playing 62% of the snaps. Pitts is playing 69% of the snaps, but he's not getting the targets for whatever reason. He's only tight end 29. London at wide receiver 52. A lot of this is going to fall back on Desmond Ridder and his lack of accuracy. And then some of it is just being taken away by the running game. Arthur Smith wants to run the ball and get the ball to Bijan, and I think that's admirable. Bijan is a fantastic running back. But I think if Desmond Ridder doesn't take a huge step here in the next few games, and it's weird. Like, he'll have some games where he's very accurate, but he just doesn't put up any yards when he's doing that. And so it's like he just can't. It's kind of like Marcus Mariota. He just can't throw the ball accurately down the field. And I just don't know that that's going to be a solution to getting fantasy production out of the receivers and tight ends of the Falcons. I'd like it to be. I know that Ridder was, Matt Bruning's QB1 in this class when they came out last year, but he's got to improve that downfield accuracy so that they get more big plays down the field. And then that, I think, will help Pitts and will help London as well.
I am taking the Texans here.
I am going Texans as well.
Next up, the 0-4 Carolina Panthers at the 3-1 Detroit Lions. Dennis, we liked the Miles Sanders signing over the offseason, but it hasn't panned out as much for fantasy. How are you approaching him as a fantasy play?
I think he's the guy they want to get the ball to there. But also, the frustrating thing is the tush push, or the brotherly shove, I guess is what they call it in Philadelphia. They get down close, and then Jalen Hurts is just gobbling up short touchdown runs.
Well, he's in Carolina.
I don't know. I heard Miles Sanders, and I went to Philadelphia. So I'm going to blame it on my neck. All right, we'll cut this out, right? Miles Sanders. So his issue has been that Carolina offensive line has not been as good as had been hoped in the preseason. And Bryce Young hasn't, I don't think he has met expectations either. Now, Bryce did have a little bit better game last week, got the ball down the field a little bit further. But I think Sanders right now is in that low end flex by week replacement territory.
Yeah, for Detroit, Jameson Williams, his suspension got cut a couple games short, which turns out to be good because unfortunately Amon-Ra St. Brown has been downgraded to doubtful, which my feelings about my fantasy teams, where he's one of my leading players, are also now doubtful. But, Williams looks like he's on track to play this week. What are you feeling for this season debut?
I'm not starting him unless it's a situation where I'm just out of players. It's probably a rebuilding team, and he's just a guy I was able to pick up and hold on to. We saw it last year. He's a deep threat, and until he gets settled in and gets some games under his belt, we don't know how his game is going to impact what the Lions do. We know what he can bring to the table based on his college career. He's that field stretcher, super explosive. He's a good route runner, so there's definitely potential for him to be a big piece of the offense. What we do know is Amon-Ra is a ball hog, and he's going to keep getting targets as long as he's healthy, which he may not be this week, but and that Jared Goff trusts Josh Reynolds. So Williams is going to have to get in there and start earning that trust. We'll see how it goes. Last year we were excited because he caught that one long touchdown pass. It happened to be the only thing he caught all year, but he's 2 years removed from his knee surgery now. He was able to work with the team in preseason until he got injured. We'll see what happens. I'm I'm definitely not trying to find an excuse to put him in my lineup. I'll wait for him to have a couple games that shows me some kind of consistency.
I am taking the Lions in this one.
I got to stick with my Lions.
On to Indianapolis, where the 2-2 Tennessee Titans are at the 2-2 Indianapolis Colts. Dennis, it looks like Kyle Phillips and Treylon Burks are out again. How are you approaching this Titans passing game options?
Is this where I talk about DeAndre Swift yet? No,
I mean, there is a DeAndre you can work in.
So the Titans passing game. So Tannehill is QB 29, and it just isn't. I thought there might be a chance when they signed Hopkins and with Treylon Burks flashing at the end of last year and Chigo Okonkwo and drafting Tyjae Spears and to be a receiving back. I thought there was a possibility that we might get a little bit of a resurgence from Ryan Tannehill. I would be wrong. I don't see anything coming from Tannehill. You know, Hopkins is sitting at wide receiver 48. He's the wide receiver 1 on the Titans, but he's a wide receiver 4 for fantasy. You just don't until that team does something more. You have to approach it with putting him down there. Is probably a flex at best. Burks is at wide receiver 91. He's second on the team in air yards and first in ADOT. He's got a 17.3 yard ADOT, but he's out again this week. Nick Westbrook-Akine, who's wide receiver 49, one spot behind DeAndre Hopkins, leads the team in routes run. And I got to say, it's probably by virtue of being healthy. So Okonkwo's tight end 35. He's not getting any volume whatsoever. I'm avoiding pretty much all of them except if I have a desperation flex that I need.
For the Colts, Jonathan Taylor had his practice window activated. Practice fully is officially listed as questionable. How are you approaching the backfield? Do you think he and Moss will split? Do you think it's going to be mostly Jonathan Taylor?
I think they're going to split until Taylor just takes it. That could be this week. It could be first quarter, could be second quarter. But I think as Taylor gets out there and starts performing, we're going to see the difference between him and Zach Moss. Moss has had a great year. I mean, he's RB11 on the season in points per game. JT was only RB23 last year in points per game. He had a tough year. I feel like, you know, the things that Taylor has said right now, he's making nice, whether it's because he realizes he doesn't have a choice or not, or whether there's just some tacit, unspoken agreement that, look, you need to get in here and play nice and we'll give you the ball and we're going to try and trade you if we get a reasonable offer. But, you know, people aren't going to trade for the, you know, we're not going to get what you're worth if they're trying to trade for what you did last year. So I think it's going to start out probably 50-50, and it could go swing heavily towards Taylor this week. It could take a couple weeks for him to get his legs under him. The talent level, the gap between Taylor's talent and Moss's talent is immense. And Moss has done a great job. And I think because Indianapolis isn't going to pay their running back, they're okay if they can get value for Taylor. They're okay moving on from him and sticking with Moss and saying, look, we're going to ride Anthony Richardson and Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs. You know, we'll ride those guys and let Zach Moss, and we'll run him on the cheap until he's used up, and we'll get somebody else.
Yeah, they have until October 31st to find a trade partner. I'll be curious to see if that gets done, but I am taking the Colts.
I am too. That Tennessee team is just a train wreck right now.
New York Giants 1-3. Speaking of train wrecks, are at the 3-1 Miami Dolphins. Dennis, Saquon Barkley officially questionable, is getting some limited practice, but some of the reports have seemed that he is trending toward possibly not playing again, which is not great. We know offensive tackle Andrew Thomas, guard Shane Lemieux, and center John Michael Schmitz Jr. are all out. Daniel Jones has been on the struggle bus. Last week on Monday night, basically had his coach kind of flip a Microsoft Surface at him. Is there any
Not a sponsor.
Is there any part of you that wants to put him in a lineup?
I am. I'm avoiding Daniel Jones as much as I can, and it's pretty terrible because I spent some capital acquiring him over the last 18 months because I liked what he was doing with Brian Daboll, and he was running the ball more, which was elevating his floor. He seemed to have eliminated the turnovers. Now, a lot of it, I think, can be chalked up to that offensive line. He's not getting time to do anything. He's getting beat and run down. It is, he's a punching bag back there. And unfortunately, he's not a guy that can respond very well to that kind of pressure. So the Giants are in a tough spot. And, Matt Breida is not going to put them on his back and carry them out like Saquon Barkley might. Still, the wide receivers have not stepped up. Out of nowhere, now it's Wan'Dale Robinson who seems to be the guy. But even then, he's catching 5-yard crosses and not getting downfield. Jalen Hyatt and Darius Slayton are probably the two most frustrating guys because they can both get open deep. They just, if they can't get open deep in 1.5 seconds, it doesn't matter because Jones is getting run down and he's either sacked or running for his life with no time to throw. I'm avoiding Jones unless I absolutely have to start him.
Miami made a trade, as you mentioned at the top this morning. They sent a 6th-round pick in 2025 for a 7th-round pick in 2025 and disgruntled wide receiver Chase Claypool. How do you think Claypool factors into the Miami offense?
So did you hear what Mike McDaniel said about the trade?
No.
He said, well, we weren't looking to improve our wide receiver group when asked about it. So I think what he means is, look, we weren't actively seeking a trade to try and improve our wide receiver group. But when we got this offer, we felt it was good enough and it would help our team. So we went ahead and made the trade. But because he used so many fewer words, it sounds like he basically said, yeah, we don't think this guy's good either, but what the heck?
Oh, that might be true. I don't think he'll play this week for sure, but I am taking the Dolphins.
I'm taking the Dolphins as well.
Next up, the 2-2 New Orleans Saints at the 1-3 New England Patriots. Dennis Juwan Johnson has been ruled out. We know Alvin Kamara is getting a lot of touches, and you're playing him. Aside from Kamara, is there any Saint you're feeling good about?
Well, I think that if Derek Carr can throw the ball at all, I think you feel good about Olave and Thomas because they've been productive until last week when Derek Carr could only throw the ball, from his 3-step drop to the line of scrimmage. I still don't understand, what did Jameis Winston do that made the Saints offer him that much money to stay and then just absolutely refuse unless literally, it's Vormir and the choice is throw somebody off a cliff or start Jameis Winston. And I'm like, I don't know. It just feels like if Carr can't throw the ball, why are you starting him over Jameis Winston? So I feel like it's going to be another game of Carr trying to tough it out. You probably have Olave as a wide receiver 3 that I'd be okay with, and Michael Thomas as a flex option. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball very well against New England, and they're probably not going to be able to throw it very well either. the plus side of things is New England doesn't have an offense that's going to put up a ton of points and make them have to throw the ball. So you start Thomas, you start Olave, and you do it with low expectations.
For the Patriots, Mac Jones struggled quite a bit himself this last week, ended up getting benched for a little while. Could this end up being a little bit of a bounce back game for him?
So Mac has a tendency to, have issues like this, and then he comes back. He's a fighter. He's scrappy. I know he looks like a junior senator, but he's got some moxie to him. I think getting benched last week was as much Bill Belichick saying, "Yeah, I don't, we're just not gonna get back in this thing. There's no reason for you to be out there taking hits unnecessarily. I know you want to keep fighting, but I'm the boss, and you're not going to get out there and keep fighting." And we'd also, let's continue to see. We brought Zappe back because we want to develop him. So let's put him in there and let him develop a little bit. If I'm Mac, I probably wanted to stay in there and keep fighting. But Bill came right out the next press conference and was like, "Mac is our starter. There's no hesitation there." This is as good a team as any to have a bounce back on. The trouble with New England is like several teams is they just don't have a dominant receiving core. There's really, Hunter Henry's the only guy you can comfortably start in their receiving room. And even then, it can get a little bit dicey. Every now and then one of their receivers goes off. Could be Bourne, it could be Parker, it could be Juju, who knows? But you just don't know who it's going to be. But I think Mac will be fine. I think he'll give you, low end QB2 numbers. So he's startable in Superflex.
I am taking the Patriots in this one.
So am I.
Next up, a battle for the AFC North. The Baltimore Ravens 3-1 at the 2-2 Pittsburgh Steelers. Dennis, we know we're starting Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. I see Odell Beckham Jr. is trending toward playing this week. Are there any other Ravens that you're interested in besides Andrews and Jackson?
With the running game or the running back landscape like it is, Justice Hill and Gus Edwards are in flex consideration. The guy I want to keep an eye on there, it's about time to maybe start picking up a speculative ad in Keaton Mitchell. He flashed in the
went on IR.
He is. That's why it's speculative. When he comes back, he could be a guy that gets in there. He could provide spark a la Jaleel McLaughlin or, I hate to say Devin A-Chain because he's exploded and not just provided a spark. But he's a small guy with some speed and elusiveness at the running back position. So I think that for me, Gus and Justice Hill are deeper flexes, especially given the running back landscape.
For the Steelers, it looks like Kenny Pickett is going to play. Pat Freiermuth was ruled out. No Deontay Johnson still. How are you approaching these Steelers wide receivers?
I'm trying to get my Deontay Johnson prayer circle fired up because I have significant rostership of Deontay Johnson. So far, no luck. So Pickens is a boom bust guy, and when you start him, you know you could get 7 points. You could get 25 points. If you believe anything else, I don't know what to tell you. Calvin Austin is in the same boat. And so is Allen Robinson. Neither one of those guys has provided anything consistent where you can count on them in even a flex role. They're both guys that I think you depending on how deep your league is, you find yourself looking at them and going, is this what I'm doing? Is I'm starting Allen Robinson, who's the big slot in Pittsburgh, and I'm hoping he can catch 4 passes for 40 yards. those 8 points might matter. So
They might. I am going to take the Ravens.
yeah, as much as I'd like to take the Steelers, I'm taking the Ravens as well. It seems like they're getting ready to pull away with the division.
The Philadelphia Eagles 4-0 at the Los Angeles Rams, who are 2-2. Dennis, we've talked about in recent weeks, Dallas Goedert's still a good talent, but has not been a big factor in what the Eagles are doing. How do you feel about him as a weekly fantasy play?
Not great, Bob. I mean, he's tight end 30. So, I mean, he's not startable in 2 tight end leagues. So, if you roster him, you can't just cut him. He's 3rd on the team in routes run. It just hasn't translated into targets yet. So, I think it'll be there. Who'd have thought Olamide Zaccheaus would have this big an impact on Dallas Goedert, who's been a top 10 tight end most of his career. I think he'll be fine. You just have to kind of wait and see, and maybe you're starting him in a bye week, and if he starts to get consistent like he was, then you feel better running him out there. But they've got a squeaky wheel receiver. AJ Brown's very open about, I'm so excited. I'm here with Devonta Smith. It's great. We're both number ones, but when AJ Brown isn't getting his touches, he's like, hey, I talk a good game, but that's just because you better remember to get me the ball.
Maybe you can throw Dallas Goedert into your prayer circle with all the other ones you're trying to get going.
Yeah, and then you got Jalen Hurts, who's sniping touchdowns at twice a game. So I mean, he could throw those. He could let Swift run them. Anything. Just stop it, Jalen. I can't say that because I do have Jalen in several spots.
For the Rams, Cooper Kupp looks like he's on track to make his season debut. What are your expectations?
If he says he's ready to play and the medical staff says he's ready to play, and Sean McVay, okay, I don't believe Sean McVay, but if the medical staff and Cooper Kupp say he's ready to play, he's probably going to get 15 targets and have 10 catches for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Hopefully it'll be a good week for fantasy.
He's going to go out and Cooper Kupp is going to go out and do what Cooper Kupp does. And until we see that he can't do it, there's no reason to expect he won't. I get it. We love that Puka Nacua stepped right in and did pretty much what Cooper Kupp was doing. But, Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp, and when he gets back in there, he's going to get his volume back.
I am taking the Eagles in this one.
Oh, let's see. I'm going to take the Rams at home to upset the Eagles.
All right. Next up, the 1-3 Cincinnati Bengals at the 1-3 Arizona Cardinals in the game that no one saw coming.
We suck again.
Dennis, the Bengals have been a little bit on the struggle bus when it comes to offense. T. Higgins is officially questionable, but hasn't really been practicing this week with some rib injuries. Jamar Chase made some news about potentially wanting to be traded, which is the last thing the Bengals need. What are you doing with approaching the Bengals for fantasy?
So the best I think you can hope for is that as long as he doesn't re-injure it, that Joe Burrow's calf gets a little better each week. And they're telling us it's getting better. It's getting better. The reality up to this point is that it hasn't allowed him to push off and throw the ball downfield with any good velocity. It doesn't allow him to move out of the pocket and make plays off schedule. So, Zach Taylor's offense, they're not at a point where they can just run their offense and dominate people when the quarterback is banged up like he is. So it's a little bit disconcerting, but I think you've got to trust that Joe is going to do everything he can to get Jamar Chase the ball. And every time that Burrow throws the ball to Chase and it's underthrown, he goes back to the huddle and he's like, motherfucker, I told you to sit out.
Yeah.
So T. Higgins, I think he may play. He broke a rib and it'll come down to pain tolerance. He cracked a rib and it's only one, allegedly.
Does it even matter if he plays? He only occasionally is getting targeted or getting receptions anyway.
Well, he's getting plenty of targets, but
yeah,
as long as it's not the doctor that gave Tyrod Taylor the shot, he'll probably be okay.
Lord. For the Cardinals, Josh Dobbs hasn't been too bad, and we've seen Marquise Brown and Michael Wilson kind of getting going. How are you feeling about the Cardinals receivers?
Let's see, where is Josh Dobbs here?
Among quarterbacks?
Yeah, he's QB 16. So,
but if you took out week 1, which was somewhat of an abomination, he is actually QB 6.
So, Dobbs is playing way over his head. He's playing like a guy with nothing to lose. And I think that I think I love that. I think that's a situation where he's like, you know what? Nobody believes in us. I'm going to give you guys everything I got, and we're going to make something happen. Michael Wilson is stepping up. I think he's been one of the surprise rookie receivers so far this year. Hollywood Brown's having a decent year. Rondale Moore is getting involved on the ground. And James Conner is just going out there. He packs his lunch and comes to work every day and just keeps pounding rocks until, there's a hole somewhere. To me, I think they're undermanned on both sides of the ball, but they're doing what they need to. They're playing as a team. They've rallied around each other. And, I'm going to go, but, the next time my team needs to hire a head coach, I'm going to see how awkward they are and giving speeches and stuff. Because it seems like those awkward speech guys know how to get their team rallying around them.
I don't know why, but I'm going to take the Bengals.
I'm going to take the Cardinals. I don't know why either.
Who would have thought this would be essentially a pick'em game? Speaking of really stellar matchups, the 1-3 New York Jets at the 1-3 Denver Broncos. Dennis, they said the snap restrictions are off for Breece Hall from this point going forward. How are you feeling about him for fantasy?
Well, they also said he didn't have snap restrictions when he came back. So which one was the lie?
Yeah, well, probably the first one.
Right. Breece Hall is an immense talent, and they'd be completely crazy to feel an obligation to give the ball to a pretty washed up looking Dalvin Cook. I mean, Michael Carter seems to be outplaying Dalvin Cook. And I think that you want to, given the challenges that Zach Wilson is facing, and Wilson played a decent game last week, and he seems to be saying the right things in interviews, taking accountability so that, he isn't getting outcast by his teammates. Whether he learned that from Aaron Rodgers, I don't think so, because Aaron doesn't give a crap what his teammates think. But he's kind of, the Jets seem to be rallying around Zach Wilson, and one of the best ways to do that is going to be to get the ball to Breece Hall and let him run. He broke off another long run last week, and I want to see him keep getting better, keep going forward. He's good in the passing game. He's good in the run game, really good. And if he can perform, that takes pressure off of Zach Wilson. And if there's not as much pressure on Zach Wilson, that's great for Garrett Wilson.
For the Broncos, we've now seen 6 games for Russell Wilson since Nathaniel Hackett was removed, and he's averaging 20.7 points this year. He is averaging 19.9 in 4 games and is QB9 on the season. Jets have a decent defense, but how are you feeling about Russ?
I'm a little concerned this week because the Jets' defensive backfield is good, and I don't know that Judy and Sutton have what it takes to beat those two guys. Now, with that being said, that may open things up for Marvin Mims down the field, and for whatever reason, Brandon Johnson, who they can't seem to keep off the field for Marvin Mims. But Mims has been super explosive. If they can get any kind of balance out of the running game with Javonte or Jaleel and Samaje, talk about a jag. I think if they can keep it balanced, then Russ will be able to get the ball to his receivers. It certainly feels like one of those 2 touchdown, 2 interception kind of games for Russ, and that's just a function of the Jets defensive backs just being good.
You know what? To hell with Nathaniel Hackett. I am taking the Broncos.
I'm taking them too. I want to take the Jets. I just can't buy into them on the road.
I want the Jets to get obliterated. The Kansas City Chiefs 3-1 at the 1-3 Minnesota Vikings. Dennis, we know we're playing Kelsey, Mahomes, and Isaiah Pacheco. Is there any Chief beyond that piques your interest?
Honestly, I think it's Rashee Rice. He seems to be making the most out of his opportunities. He's only ran 52 routes, so he's only has a 32% route share. What's he got? 19 targets though, which is second on the team behind Travis Kelce. So he is getting the ball. I thought it would be Sky Moore. I really expected Moore to step up and kind of be the guy because he's there for his second year. Now Moore has 15 targets, so he's third on the team. But then Noah Gray has got 13. He's fourth on the team. So it's a situation where they're spreading the ball around a lot, but Rashee Rice seems to be the guy that's most consistently making plays over Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney. I think he's a low-end flex with, you hope for some touchdown upside because that's one of the things he did in college, was score touchdowns. But when they get in the red zone, Mahomes only has eyes for Kelce, it seems.
For the Vikings, the running game was more of a rumor the first 2 weeks, so they traded for Cam Akers. And a funny thing happened the last 2 games. Alexander Mattison picked it up. He is actually RB13 for the last 2 weeks. How are you approaching this backfield for Minnesota?
Honestly, I think it's Madison's job until it isn't. Akers on very limited touches last week was productive. And I think that'll be the case. But as long as, Madison played a couple real tough defenses and he wasn't very productive. Then he had a couple fairly soft run defenses and he was productive. And I think we get that same kind of thing from Cam Akers when Akers doesn't put up great numbers against good defenses. So I feel like they're going to be a 1-2 punch. It's going to be a 65-35 kind of split between the two of them. But until Madison and until they decide, and we won't know until the game is over that they've decided Cam Akers has earned a 50-50 split, or he's now the 65 guy in the 65-35 split. And even then, if it happens in a game, I don't know that I would trust for Akers to have taken over the next game until I see it actually happen. So I think Madison is a flex-worthy running back with running back 2 upside.
I am taking the Chiefs in this one.
So am I.
Sunday Night Football might actually be the best game of the week. The 3-1 Dallas Cowboys at the 4-0 San Francisco Giants. Dennis, for the Cowboys, we know we're playing CeeDee Lamb, but how are you feeling about the rest of their wide receivers?
Best to avoid. To me, what's happening is it's ending up that like one will pop off for a play here or there, but they're not making enough of an impact. Gallup is averaging 7.4 points a game. Cooks is averaging 4.9 points a game. They're getting some opportunities. It just isn't translating into fantasy points, and they're winging a prayer starts. If you're starting Gallup, it's because you're hoping he catches a long one, gets into the end zone. If you're starting Cooks, you're hoping for some reason Dak has decided that he's earned 5 or 6 targets and he can get 4 or 5 catches for 50 or 60 yards.
For the 49ers, they have an embarrassment of riches that really starts with Christian McCaffrey back there. They've been getting the wide receivers involved, sometimes, one game at a time. It seems like George Kittle is kind of suffering. He had one really good game in week 3 where he caught 9 for 70. Aside from that, here are his point totals: 4.9, 6, and last week 1.9. He's tight end 13 on the season thanks to that one decent game. But how are you feeling about Kittle?
So if we could rewind to the offseason when we talked about the San Francisco 49ers, what I said was it would be a team that it was Christian McCaffrey for fantasy, and then 1.5 of Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle. I mean, Deebo didn't have any targets last week. Crazy. So, and that's how it's shaken out. You can count on McCaffrey, and then you can count on one other player, and it seems like Ayuk is more often than not that other player. And then Deebo is the second opportunity. He's the half, I guess you would call him. And Kittle seems to get shut out. He gets the half occasionally, like he did in week 3. It's tough.
Which is when Ayuk was out. Week 3, the one game Ayuk's gone, Deebo and Kittle both ate.
Right. So it's a tough spot to be in because Kittle is a really, really good tight end. And he's a phenomenal team player. And he's not going to bitch about, I need more targets, especially if they're winning. He's doing everything he can to help that team win. And he doesn't care if he catches 1 ball or if he catches 15, as long as the team is winning. It's tough to start him. He's outside of the top 12 in tight ends. Because of the one good week, he's barely outside. He'd probably be a low end tight end too if he had what looks to be a normal week where he got 5 or 6 points. So it's tough to start him.
I am taking the 49ers in this one.
Yeah, Dallas just hasn't been consistent enough, so I'm going to take the Niners as well.
Monday Night Football to close out the week is 2-2 Green Bay Packers at the 1-3 Las Vegas Raiders. Dennis, for most of the season, the Packers' running game has been mostly a rumor. Aaron Jones still banged up, but questionable, tracking toward playing. Can the Packers finally get the running game going this week?
This is as good a week as any for them. The Raiders are giving up the 7th most rush yards through 4 games. They've given up the 9th most rush attempts. So teams know that they give up yards, and they're taking advantage and running against them. The downside is that I don't know that A.J. Dillon, even against a soft defense yet, is going to be able to put up many numbers. So it all falls on Aaron Jones. So as long as he's healthy, I think you roll out Aaron Jones as potentially an RB1 this week. I'd feel more comfortable counting on him as an RB2. I'm not looking to have Dillon in my lineup anywhere. But if they want to get the running game fired back up, the Raiders are the team to do it against.
Speaking of the Raiders, Jimmy G missed last week with a concussion, but he's finally cleared the protocol, looks to be on track to play. How are you feeling about him? You know, he's averaging 15.4 points per game in the games that he plays.
Well, I think Jimmy is going to be in a good position this week because as weak as the Raiders defense is against the rush, the Packers defense is worse. So this looks like a great week for Josh Jacobs. So there's going to be now Devontae Adams is going to get his. Chalk him up for his 14 targets. Devontae Adams, check. Jacoby Myers will probably get his 7, check. After that, it's going to be all Josh Jacobs. The Packers give up 4th most rushing yards, the most rush attempts, and the 3rd most receptions to running back. So it's an all-around game for Josh Jacobs. We could see a 30-point game from Josh Jacobs this week. I think this is where he gets it going to start after a slow start.
My Scott Fishbowl team would appreciate that. Something to keep an eye on. Devontae Adams did not practice today since they are the Monday night team. It would be Saturday's practice would be kind of the normal Friday practice for Sunday teams, but something to keep an eye on just in case he can't give it a go.
Well, if he can't go, then you fire up Jacoby Myers because we have seen that Garoppolo has chemistry with him too, and then that probably makes Renfro, and they've got one other guy. Don't they have a rookie that's been getting involved a little bit too? Because they're not using their tight ends for anything.
Yeah, which is a real bummer because I liked the Michael Mayer landing spot. But despite all that, I'm taking the Raiders at home.
I am too.
Well, that'll be a wrap on the Week 5 slate. Dennis, people can probably tune into some college games, but if they're pining for that London start, what can they do to fill their Saturday?
So what you do is you put on college football, go watch them Ohio State Buckeyes or your college team, whoever it is. Then you stick an earbud in one ear and you fire up your phone and you go to your favorite podcast platform and you subscribe to the Fantasy Football Roundtable. You just listen to it in one ear while you're watching your favorite college football team coast to victory on homecoming weekend.
Well, that'll do it for us this week. We will be back on Tuesday with a full recap of the rest of the Week 5 action. Until then, you guys have a great weekend and enjoy